tools you're going to need a needle. This is like a flexible beading needle, but any kind of needle will work. You're going to need a clasp set, so both sides of a clasp. These here are called crimps. I'm going to use them to hide the knots. They're not necessary, and again, you'll see why in a minute, but nice to have if you have them or can get them. They're super cheap. You're going to need 3 colors of beads. So I'm going to be using white for the flower petals, yellow for the center of the flowers, and green to space between the daisies. And these are seed beads in this size here, but you can use different sizes of beads. It doesn't necessarily have to be that exact size. You'll also need some scissors. If you're using the crimps, you'll need a pair of pliers to crimp them, and then you'll need some sort of thread. Beading thread is what I'll be using. It's a little bit stronger, but I'm sure you could use almost any kind of string that you have on hand as long as it's thin enough. You could even use fishing line. I just wouldn't use like beading wire. You need this to be flexible. It's going to be quite hard to see on camera, but I've taken a length of beading thread that is several times longer than the bracelet I want to make, and I'm going to double it over to make it even stronger. So what I need to do is thread my needle on now before I put my clasp on. And here you can see I've got the needle threaded in that sort of bottom loop of the fold of the thread. And here's my double end. So now I'm going to take this end and I'm going to attach one of my clasp sides here. So there you can see that the thread is attached, and this knot is what I'm going to cover up with a crimp. Just taking my needle and threading on one of these little crimps, and when the crimp is on and over the knot, I'm just going to take my pliers and you flatten it and it covers your knot. Now I'm just going to trim these tails here so that I'm just left with my 2 long strands with my needle on them. Alright, so now that we've got one end of our bracelet set up, we can actually start with the beading. I've just put 1 green bead on to start, and now I'll do the first daisy. So I'm going to pick up 4 white beads for 4 of the petals. Now sometimes you could do 3 and have a 6-petaled flower. I prefer the look of the flower having 7, so that's just personal preference. So I've got 4 white beads, and then I'm going to do my center flower bead as well. So I run those to the end, and then I'm going to take my needle and go back through the first white bead. And so you can see how this creates the first half of the first flower. So now I'm just going to thread on my 3 remaining white beads for my 3 remaining petals. And once you have those 3 remaining bead petals on, you're going to take your needle and go through what is now sort of your top petal and form the rest of the flower. And when you pull it tight, you have your daisy. So I'll show you one more time. I'm making sort of a chunkier bracelet with not as much spacing between the flowers, so I'm just doing 1 green bead in the middle between 2 flowers, and then I'm taking my next 4 white beads and my yellow bead for the center, threading them down, sort of taking it and going back through sort of backwards on that first white bead, pull to form half my flower, and another 3 white beads. Oh my goodness, there we go. Down, so it looks like that, and then I'm just going to go through this sort of top, there, show you this way, this sort of top petal, like that. And I'm going to continue along. Okay, so I now have all of the daisies that I want on the bracelet, and I'm just going to finish it off. So before I tie the other side of the clasp on, I'm going to thread on my crimp, and then thread on my clasp. I'm just going to use my needle here to tie a few knots. Right, so that's knotted on, and then the last thing I'm going to do is bring my needle backwards through the crimp so that I can sort of push the knot into the crimp. Use my pliers to close the crimp, flatten it on there, and then I'll just cut off this excess string. And there you have the finished daisy chain bracelet. Obviously you can use this method of making the little daisies for any design you want, any colors you want. You can also space them out more, of course. So here's another example. This is actually a mask chain that I made where I did this green between the flowers, so they're just more spaced out, and instead of like a clasp at the end, it has these alligator clips that clip onto a face mask so that you can wear the face mask around your neck. So that's just another example of how you can make something cute with these little daisy beads. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope this was helpful.